Hey everyone, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2024 Ford Bronco, we're going to be showing you how to install the Roadmaster Smart Diode wiring kit for vehicles with LED taillights. But before we do that, let's just take a minute, we'll check these out and make sure they're going to work for you. Right off the bat, I do want to address one of the main questions that we get asked when it comes to setting up a flat tow, and that's what parts am I going to need? So there's a total of 5 major components. You'll have your base plate, your tow bar, your safety cables, your tow bar wiring, as well as your supplemental braking system. What the tow bar wiring kit is even going to do to begin with is transfer lighting functions from the back of your motorhome to the back of your Bronco, right? That way people around you know what's going on, and it's a legal requirement as well. And so you'll get all of your basic functions. You'll get your right turn signal, and your left turn signal, brake lights, and your tail lights. So whatever you do in the motorhome, you know, as far as what lights you got on, those are going to get sent back here and emulate that. Now, with that said, this kit is designed to work with vehicles that have LED tail lights. I'm not sure if the Broncos have incandescent lights, but if they do, there's a kit exactly the same as this, but just specifically designed for the incandescent bulb. So if that's what you got, check those out. And honestly, I feel like this is probably the best option as far as tow bar wiring goes for the Bronco, really for a couple of different reasons. Being the fact that they're smart diodes, they work with variable voltage lighting, and how these manufacturers now set up their lights with, you know, all these LEDs, and they do really neat things. The smart diode is a really safe bet not to run into any issues or cause any issues, so to speak, and just the overall size of them. So you have one little square diode that you have to mount in here, and on these Broncos, it is super tight working kind of in and around the taillight area. So the fact that it's more compact than some of the other options makes it a little bit better of a fit. Once the parts are all installed, setup from there is going to be really simple whenever you are actually ready to hook up and tow behind your motorhome. All you're going to have to do is plug your cable into the back of your RV's 7-way, and the other end will just get plugged right into the connector plug there on the front of the Bronco. Now, with that said, there are 2 variations, if you will, of this kit. One of them will come with the diodes, the wiring, a couple ins and outs to help you get it installed. And then the other kit, like the one that we have here today, will come with the wiring, the diodes, a cable, and the connector plug. So depending on what you may already have or what tow bar you have, one kit might be better for you than the other. So for example, our neighbor today didn't have the cable or the connectors, so that's why we use this particular kit. On the other hand, if you already have them, or let's say for example some of the tow bars come with those components, like the Roadmaster Nighthawk for example, if that's your particular situation, then getting the kit that doesn't come with the cable or the connector would make a little more sense, right? Because you don't need to get parts that you already have. Other than that, at the end of the day, like I said, this would be the kit that I'd go with for the Bronco. You know, we've done a lot of these on all different types and makes and models, and they're reliable. They just flat out work. So no-brainer for sure. As far as the installation goes, it's not that it's super complicated per se, but it's definitely time consuming. You do have to route a wire from the front all the way to the back and get up into the taillights like we talked about. Not a ton of room to work with there, so you know, bear with us as far as that goes, but hopefully what I learned can help you and make it a little more simple during your installation. With that said, if this is something you don't even want to mess with, you can always use our dealer locator network. That can help you find a shop in your neighborhood that can do something like this for you. If not, and you're going to give it a go though, hang around, we'll go ahead, pull into the garage and get started on it now. To begin our installation for our tow bar wiring, go ahead and pop your hood. And there's a big bundle of wire that you'll get. Take one end of it, and I just have it dropping down straight down, and it comes out kind of right here in this area, and eventually we'll, you know, hide it, tuck it up in there better and stuff, but for now we're just going to route it over to the bracket here where our connector plug will be mounted up. From here you can take the rubber dust boot that goes in the back of your connector plug. We'll just slide that over the wire and tuck it up there for now. And then what you want to do is carefully kind of cut in between to separate all these wires, and then just peel them back a few inches. About like that. And then I like to just kind of bring them all back together here. Cut off a ½ inch or so, just kind of clean it up in case we nicked one when we were separating them. And then you're just going to strip the insulation back on each wire, about like that. Give them a twist so the wires are tight. That'll make it easier to put into the connector and give us a better connection. So as far as the connector goes, if you look at it, it might be a little tricky to see, but they are labeled. All right, we have TM for taillights, so the brown wire goes there. GD for ground, white wire goes there. This is LT for left turn, yellow wire goes there. RT for right turn, the green wire goes there. And you just want to take a small screwdriver, back those set screws out almost all the way. And we'll take the appropriate wire. So we'll just start with our taillights here. Place that into the terminal, and I might shorten it up a little bit too. I really don't like having the bare wire kind of hanging out and exposed. So once we have all the set screws out, you can take the appropriate colored wire. We'll start with our taillights here. Put them into the terminal. Try to make sure there's no bare wire kind of hanging out. So if you have to shorten ends up a little bit, you can go ahead and cut some off. We'll just snug it down. And then just work our way around until we have all of them hooked up. Here's how the connector looks once all of our wires are hooked up. And something that I do once everything is done and I know wiring is working properly is I'll come back in here and put silicone around all the terminals just to seal it up and prevent corrosion. But for the time being, we'll take our cover there, pop that on, and secure the connector plug. Back under the hood, right here next to the battery, there's this factory ground, and we're going to utilize that to ground our white wire. All right, so I'll cut it to length, and just be very careful. You're looking to just cut the white wire and separate it from the harness. And the side that we want to work with will be the side that goes down to our connector plug. And so what you can do is strip that insulation back, give the wire a twist, and this is how we'll make all of our connections, whether it be a butt connector, ring terminal, spade terminal, what have you. And you want to take a ring terminal, put it over the bare end of the wire, and crimp it down. And then we can take a 13mm socket and remove this factory bolt. And I'm just keeping the factory ground wire kind of pushed onto it just so we don't lose connection. Really not a huge deal. And pull the bolt out. Put the ring terminal through it. We'll just tighten it back down. As far as what we can do with the rest of the white wire that's attached to the remaining portion of our harness, you can just peel that off completely and hold on to it, as we'll probably use it a little bit later on, and it'll make it easier to run the rest of the harness too. This is all tangled up, but what I'm gonna do, this wiring is gonna have to get routed to the back by our taillights. So once I get this white wire off of this, I'll go ahead, route this, and show you the path that I took. Our wiring, I started to get that routed, and I just have it running along through here, and I left a little bit of slack in here. That's because our supplemental braking system needs to tie into this wiring. So if that's what type of system you have, consider doing that. It gives you some working room. But I just have it dropping straight down to the underside of our vehicle. Underneath the vehicle, on the side here, this is where our wiring drops down. And whenever you're routing wiring, make sure to do your best to avoid any hot or moving parts. But I just have it running to the side of our frame, along through here. And I'm also installing a brake controller and some trailer wiring and stuff, so I routed these wires at the same time. That's what this stuff is, in case you're wondering. And I left this all loose so we could actually kind of see, because I'll probably gonna tuck this up better and hide it once we're done. But I just have it following this factory bundle of wire all the way down the side of our frame. And at this point, it starts to kind of curl up and go to the inside portion of our frame. Here's where the wiring kind of comes to the inside portion of the frame, you know, and I just have it routed up through here, over our rear axle, and it's kind of tricky to see, but it's tucked up way up here to try to keep it away from the exhaust as much as I could. And when I got to about this point here in the corner, what I did is I took the green wire and peeled it off of our harness, right? So that left me with the yellow and brown. And I taped the extra piece of white wire that we had saved to the end of our yellow and brown wire. And so I taped that white wire all the way to where it meets up with the green wire. And so we'll let the yellow brown hang over here on the driver's side. That eventually we'll have to figure out how to hook it up to our taillight wiring. And the other end of our white wire and our green wire will just get routed. I gotta put a hitch on this later, so I'm leaving this loose in case I have to move it out of the way somewhat. But it's just gonna run along through here where it drops down on the passenger side. With our wiring back here kind of ready to go, what we can do is get access to our taillight connectors. And so we're going to need to remove this small panel right here from each side of our vehicle. In order to get this off, we have 4 little plastic fasteners, and you can take a Phillips head bit and just barely apply any pressure to it while you're turning it. And that'll kind of run that whole deal out. So we'll just work our way up until we get all of these removed. So once all those are out, We can grab a 10mm. We're gonna have 2 bolts. One right here, one right there. And we should be able to kind of grab this piece here, work it out of position. We'll set this off to the side, do the same thing for the passenger side. To give us a little more working room, so there's our connector. The wiring has a little push pin right there. If you pop that free, then we can disconnect this by pushing down on this tab and pulling the ends apart. So once you have both sides unplugged like this, we need to test the wiring to figure out what our taillight signal is going to be, or what wire we're going to be working with here. So I'm using a test light, and I have the taillights on right now. And if we go through and just touch the pins with our test light, one of them has power. This one here in the middle. And that's the wire that we're going to be working with. It'll be blue with a almost like a gray or light purple stripe on it. Now that we know what wires that we need to work with, we can start to actually get everything set up. But with that said, on this vehicle, we're also installing trailer wiring. So your 4-way flat connector, when you hook up a trailer, you get all the lights to work. And now is a perfect time to get that done since I'm already in here. We have this stuff disconnected. So I'm gonna get this set up and kind of go from there. So moving forward, if you see these connectors and these components, that's what they're for. So right now, as you can see, we got pretty much everything done. And that's because we continued on with our installation using the original wire that we talked about, that blue wire with a grayish purple stripe, and go to test everything, and everything worked other than our taillights. We had an itty bitty light on the tail light, and that was it, but that's not the right way to do things. The diodes, from my experience, I've always used a tail light signal and never had that issue, but you are able to use the brake light signal in some cases, and this was one of them, and really the only way to figure out. So you know, when we're showing you during this installation, hooking all this up and everything, you'll see me using this wire, the blue with the grayish purple stripe. That's not the one you're going to want to be using. The one you actually want to be using is the blue wire with the green stripe. Okay, that's a stoplight signal. So all the information is still applicable on how to hook the terminals up and how to set everything up like that. Really, the only difference is just going to be that wire color. All right, so I just wanted to let you know while we figure this out before you go cutting into the wrong wires and everything. And the same information is also going to be applicable to the passenger side of our vehicle as well. So I was able to get our trailer wiring and stuff hooked up, like we talked about. That's what all this is. But moving on with our diodes, our tow bar wiring. What I did, since we have to work with this wire for our taillight signal, originally from the factory, they have tape around all these. I removed the tape and just taped up the ones we're not going to be messing with. Make it a little bit easier to kind of see what's going on. But what you're going to do is cut that wire in half. You want to make sure your lights are turned off while you're doing this. And we'll strip these ends back. And on each end, you'll crimp on one of these red spade terminals here. Now, if those are hooked up, you can grab your diode, and where it says car out, you can plug it in to the factory wire closest to our connector plug. Where it says car in, you plug the other side into that. So what I've done now, I took the wiring that we had underneath the vehicle and just ran it up into the opening here. and cut it to length. You know, I like to leave some extra wire, but we had like 5 foot of it probably. So cut some of that off. And then on the yellow wire, I crimped on a red spade terminal, and then cut maybe about a foot off of the brown and white wire. All right, strip those ends back. And what we're gonna do with these is twist them together. Try to get them nice and tight. And then I just took, you know, a foot of brown wire, one end crimped on a red spade terminal, the other end crimped on a yellow butt connector. And you're gonna take these 2 ends, put them in there and crimp it down. And I'm using a heat shrink butt connector. The standard ones will work just fine too, but these seal up and help protect against corrosion a little bit better. So you can't always upgrade to those if you want, but if you do use these to seal up the ends, you just use a heat gun. So I plugged our wiring in. Our brown wire will go to RV tail in. The yellow wire will go to RV brake in. And then we'll plug that into the factory harness there. In our case, the trailer wiring harness, it just tees in, same deal. And then you'll have one more terminal, right? It's labeled ground. The kit will come with a couple of these small white wires, spade terminal on that end, ring terminal on this end, and we'll have to ground this. But first I'm gonna try to tuck some of this wiring up in here and stuff and see where this is gonna live before I ground this and realize the wire's too short or something like that. So I'll get that done and kind of go from there. Not a whole lot of room in here, so I just kind of tucked everything in there, and everything's pretty secure just from how tight it is, and once the panel goes on too, it'll keep everything in place. But I'm just going to ground our ring terminal right here using the provided self-tapping screw. Over on the passenger side, this is how this one turned out. You know, pretty much set things up the same way as the driver's side, just a little different wire colors. The new green wire, that goes to RV brake in. The new white wire goes to RV tail in. The factory wire that you're going to be dealing with is blue with a almost a brownish colored stripe. It's a little bit thicker wire. So side closest to the connector, car out. Other side goes to car in, and then of course your ground. Did that the exact same way as the driver's side. Now that we have everything hooked up, we can test it. I'm using a test box which simulates a motorhome, so I just plugged in it, plugged into our connector. You can use your coach, but keep in mind if your coach happens to have any issues on its own, could mislead you, thinking it's something you did wrong on the vehicle side. But with that in mind, we'll go around back and run through our functions. We'll go ahead and try out our taillights, our left turn signal, our right turn signal, and our brake lights. Now that everything works, I think that'll about do it for our look at and our installation of the Roadmaster Smart Diode wiring kit for vehicles with LED taillights on our 2024 Ford Bronco.